Welcome to the Surratt Brothers podcast, a conversation about church, sports, current events, and mostly church. Today we answer important questions like why is Taylor Swift tortured? Who will win the NBA playoffs? And we ask our friends Todd Rhodes and Matt Steen what went wrong with the internet. And now, join me and my brother Chris for the podcast. Hey, welcome back to the podcast. I said welcome back. This may be your first time. If it is, you are in the right place. Chris, I'm here with my brother Chris. I'm Jeff. Chris, did you realize this is episode 13?
Lucky number 13, as Taylor Swift would say.
Yeah, we'll get her. We'll get to her. So, does 13 mean anything to you? Do you worry about them Friday the 13th or the 13th floor? If there were a 13th floor at a hotel, would you stay on it?
I don't. I'm not very superstitious. It's kind of funny. Like if you go to Vegas, I know you guys were just in Vegas. There are different types of things that hotels stay away from than just like 13. They have a heavy Asian tourism in Vegas. So there are some things at different casinos that in the Asian culture would be bad. And so and I can't even remember what they are, but they remove them from the casinos, or they won't have a certain floor on a hotel that's not necessarily 13, but it means something to a different culture. But no, I don't. How about you? Do you worry about it?
No, I think the fact that I've never stayed in a hotel that has a 13th floor. I think that's funny. It's funny you say that about Vegas. The hotel we were in, I noticed there were a bunch of skipped floor numbers, like not just like, they'll skip a whole block to get ahead. No, there were random skipped floors. And I do want to say, if you're new to the podcast, this is the kind of groundbreaking information you can only get here. So, that's a reason to come back. It really is. So what's new in your world? What's going on right now?
Not a lot of news since the last time we talked. I did get my mower put back together. I did notice on social media, Facebook, you offered to do some type of a show with Greg and I, kind of show it. No, it was a conference, right?
Mm-hmm.
Showing our manliness,
called the Adequate Men's Conference.
Right. Because, I rebuilt a mower and Greg planted some tomatoes, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure exactly how that makes him more of a man or makes him more of an adequate man than me or anybody else.
I didn't say he was more than. I just said adequate men. You're both adequate men. It was very hurtful. A friend of mine from the UK commented and said, "I think you meant the Inadequate Men's Conference." And I thought, that just stings a little bit. Well, congratulations on the mower.
Well, thank you. But here's a question for you. Did you know that as we're recording this, it's Wednesday, it is Administration Professionals Day? Did you know that?
I did not know that.
Well, then my next question probably doesn't mean a lot. I was going to ask what you did for your professional admin. What did you do? Anything special? Did you say anything nice? Did you not fire that person today?
Well,
you have one.
Here's the deal. I haven't had an administrative assistant in 6 years, at least 6 years. I had a virtual assistant for a while. And, if there had ever been a virtual assistant's day, I would have virtually given her a gift, but I'm not aware of that day. But no, I'm not a big shot like you. I don't have someone picking up my dry cleaning and bringing me coffee. What did you do for your administrative professional today?
Well, since I kind of sort of have one at heart, I share this assistant with like 2 or 3 other pastors. So I'm like a quarter, so I actually didn't do anything. But last year I happened to be out in California, so we took her to lunch, and I figured that was a good enough lunch. You could probably do every other year when it's not your only administration. Here's what I love about
that. This is an insight into you, Chris. Like, just kind of inside baseball, behind the scenes. The way we do the podcast is we take turns. We write up a show flow, so we'll kind of have an idea where we're going. But each one of us gets to pick any topic we want to. You chose Administrative Professional Day, knowing you did nothing for your administrative. That is so good. That is just that's awesome. Well, I did nothing for my administrative assistant who does not exist, but we're doing something tonight. Sherry and I are doing something tonight we've never done before. We are going to a murder mystery dinner. Have you ever done anything like that?
Not a murder mystery. I've gone to like a show type of dinner thing where I guess it may have been, but is this one where you actively like try to decide who did it? Is that how it works? I've never done one of those.
The way I understand it is during dinner, somebody's going to die. I hope it's not actual die. That would kind of take it dark, but someone pretends to die. And then I think we have to figure out who did it. Now, last week on our podcast, we had my wife, Sherry, and Chris, of course, you've known her your whole life. I'm pretty sure she did it. Like we're not even there yet, but I'm 90% sure Sherry did it.
Yeah, that's a good estimation. Did you know that last week's podcast has been one of our most popular downloaded so far?
You know, I am in no way surprised by that. Like people, like who wants to listen to you and me and occasionally Greg? Like I would listen to Sherry. Hey, so you brought up Taylor Swift, and I feel bad because we've done 13 episodes, and I think we've had 2 episodes where we didn't mention Taylor Swift, and so I felt bad. So I wanted to bring it up. Like, if you are breathing and in America or the UK or aware of what happens in the world of music, then you know that Taylor Swift just dropped, I think it's called the Tortured Poets Project or Tortured Poets Society.
No, not society. It's department.
That's it. Tortured Poets Department. So is this a big event in your home? Which, by the way, like there's like 400 songs. Like there's like an album, and then hey, here's another album, and 9 more. I don't know how many songs there are. It's a lot. Is it a big thing? Big thing at your house? Yeah.
No, as my daughter said, the girl has a lot of feelings right now to word vomit. She put out 31 songs.
31 songs. You know, it'd be a fun research project to find famous bands or singers who don't have 31 songs cumulative in their career. But yeah, go ahead.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I was just thinking, as if I was an artist, I would split those up and probably, save 15 or 16 of them for the next album. And that way you're ahead of the game. So you've got it written, and then you're the head of the game. And the New York Times, I don't know if you read their review of it, and they said, great album, good stuff, but she needs an editor. And I think that is pretty accurate. I have listened to it. It was a semi big deal in my house. Although nobody stayed up for the drop, at midnight and then 2 a.m. And I think if you're a true Swiftie, that is what you did. But the next day we put it on rotation and listened to it. And I have thoughts. I'm a little afraid of sharing those because,
right.
The Swifties are scary.
Yeah.
And they find things like this. Like, I think there's an algorithm where they just hear Swift comes up in the podcast, and then they automatically look it up, and then they come and kill your firstborn or something. But I have thoughts. So have you listened to it? Did you download it?
First of all, I don't think they kill your firstborn. Like they're fierce, but I don't think there's any murders so far of podcasters who said unkind things. I have not listened. In fact, to be totally honest, I think I said last week that I was carpool grandpa for my 13-year-old granddaughter. So I put on some Taylor Swift from her 1989 Taylor's version and listened a little bit, and I get it. Like, she's super talented. I am so far outside the target demographic that my opinion, what is it? It's like a cow's opinion. It's a moo point. Like it doesn't matter what I say. But for my 13-year-old granddaughter and her mother, my daughter-in-law, this is a huge event. Huge event. They went out the next day. Apparently they sell it at Target, and my granddaughter bought the album. She's been saving up for it. Have you seen the vinyl? It's cool. It's clear.
I haven't, but did you know that they're making cassettes again? You can buy a cassette of this album. Did you know that?
I had no idea. Are they making?
I don't know why.
Are they I'd heard cassettes are kind of, I don't know why. You were in the cassette world a little bit, right? Weren't you? Or was that?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Gen X was right in the middle. In fact, I saw a meme the other day talking about why Gen X are more patient just in general. And one of the pictures I used was you had to rewind the cassette to get to your favorite songs.
Yeah.
I mean, that was, yeah.
And then how to use a number 2 pencil to rewind a cassette when the cassette player eats it. Why you would go back to that horrible technology, I do not know. But yeah.
And the more you play it, the worse it sounds. It's degenerative. So I don't know why you would buy that medium and want to play it anywhere.
Right. Well, I get the album thing. It's nostalgic. There's a different sound to it. I get that. Cassette. Yeah, there's a different sound. It's a tinny, bad sound that, like you said, gets worse with time. So again, I haven't heard the Tortured Poets Project Department University. I have not heard it, but I have seen some things online. And of course, online, somebody's going to be against everything. Like you could come out with, free milk for everybody and someone explain why that's a terrible thing. But I've seen some people that say, hey, when you look through the lyrics, there's some disturbing stuff in there. And I looked through, there's several of the songs that are marked with the E for explicit. And I have a granddaughter, as I said, who loves Taylor Swift, which isn't unusual because I think that is probably 80% of the 13-year-old girls in America love Taylor Swift. Any thoughts about the lyrics? You've heard the songs. You've heard some of the other songs. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. And I've read a lot on it. It's kind of funny because Taylor Swift, I mean, she's obviously been on the front burner of media for a long time, but she hasn't been this controversial, I think, since her Reputation album, which was like 3 or 4 albums ago, when she went after Kim Kardashian and it's like, ooh. And so it feels like Taylor Swift was like, I need to do something to make some people mad. But she's definitely gotten more grittier with her lyrics. It's pretty explicit. Although if you listen to like an Olivia Rodrigo or somebody like that, who's also big in pop right now, she doesn't even come close to, some of those songs. But for Taylor Swift, like you said, her audience for a long time, and she started when she was 17, I think, something like that, with Teardrops on My Guitar, has been basically 13, 14-year-old girls. And that hasn't really changed, but she has shown some evolving over the last 2 or 3 albums. And this one really kind of gets dark and gritty. And she does say a lot of cuss words. And she also uses, I don't know if you've seen this online, a lot of kind of religious symbols in it that people have come out and said, she's supposed to be a Christian. She says she's a Christian. I don't know. I mean, I think some of it is reading into it because there's a lot of words in this album. I mean, she uses a lot of symbolism. She loves to do that, but there's a ton on this. So I don't put a lot into that. I don't think she worships Satan or, hates Christians. So she actually attended the church that I was a pastor at for a while. And so part of her band, I know, are Strong Believers and a couple of her backup singers. So I don't feel that at all, but I do think that as a parent, I don't have 13, 14-year-old girls anymore. They're now, in college and out of college. I would probably be a little more careful with, Taylor Swift, but that's just me.
Yeah, I know. As I first looked at it, I was really disturbed and, read some of the lyrics and, again, I am no expert at all. I think it's something to look at. Like I really do. At the same time, while you were talking, I thought, well, let me look up the lyrics to a song that was big when I was a teenager, maybe a little older than 13. Let's see how these lyrics land with you, Chris. Well, I know you want to love her. Let me tell you, brother, she's been sleeping in the devil's bed. And there's some rumors going around. Someone's underground. She can rock you in the nighttime till your skin turns red. Woohoo, witchy woman. See how high she flies. Woohoo, witchy woman. She got the moon in her eyes. That's not really Sunday school lyrics and probably not something that is a good influence, and I'm not defending it, but I have listened to that song on repeat for 30 years now from the Eagles' Greatest Hits album. And again, not defending it. I just think sometimes we got to be wise, but we can also go overboard looking at what everyone else is doing. And we don't always look at kind of our own stuff. So I don't know, probably a little too preachy by me, but yeah, I don't know. And now
I think it's a caution. If, like I said, if I had younger girls, I would probably encourage them to skip the ones with the F-bombs, every chorus that are in there. But like I said, if you listen, it's kind of funny. You listen to these songs on the radio and they're always radioized, they're edited, but I mostly listen through Spotify. I don't know what you do, but I stream through Spotify, and those are never the radio versions. And so we'll be listening to, current pop music, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I had no idea that word was in this song 52 times, and it's just been edited out. So Taylor Swift is not an exception when it comes to pop music right now, but I think we have just put her on this level or this, whatever, and she's changing the game, and we just need to pay attention as parents.
Yeah, no, I think that's good. All right. A little less serious. Let's shift gears a little bit. I'm a huge NBA fan. I don't think you're as big of an NBA fan, but I'm a huge NBA fan. I don't know if you know, but the Denver Nuggets are the defending NBA champions of the known universe.
I'd heard that. Yeah.
Yeah. So we're as we were recording, we're in the beginning stages of the NBA playoffs. As you know, Chris, the NBA playoffs last for months and months. We will be in the NBA playoffs for the next 2.5 months. Who you got? Who you got this year?
This is sad because I was a huge NBA fan. In college, I worked with the Rockets, the Houston Rockets, as a little part-time job that I shared with a buddy of mine. And
were you were you power forward, or like what did you do for the Rockets?
I was in the entertainment department, and
so you were one of the halftime dancers?
No, but I did stand next to them off the court, but I worked with the mascot, and it was the coolest part-time job because I got to go anywhere, locker rooms, everywhere. You got front row seats because of me having that job. So
yeah, no, I absolutely loved it. I don't remember how many games we went to. That's the only time I've sat that close to the floor was with you on your tickets. And that was nirvana. Like you don't know NBA basketball till you've sat that close and see how big those people are and how fast they move.
It's unbelievable. Yeah. So anyways, I used to be a fanatic, and I still love it, but I have not paid attention. I think part of it is not being on the mainland for a while, but I just looked. Actually, I didn't even know who all was in the playoffs, and I looked through it. I do think that Denver has probably a pretty good shot. I've watched a little bit of their 2 games against the Lakers, and Jokic, right?
Jokic. They call him the Joker, which throws it off, but the the J is a Y. It's Jokic.
Okay. He's good. He's really, really good. So I could see them repeating, but I'm just for nostalgia. I'm going to go with the Knicks. The Knicks have been a joke for years and years and years. But if you go back, they were a dominant team. So I think it'd be fun to see an Eastern Conference team.
That's kind of sick. It's just kind of sick to hear that. Yeah. So I know at one point you were a Rockets fan, right?
So I'm still a Rockets fan. If they were in the playoffs,
I know. I'm fine with that. Yeah. I'm just saying
they were 500 this year, which they have not even been close to 500.
No, I'm going back. Seasons. Okay. Hakeem Olajuwon.
Yep.
Patrick Ewing.
I stood in between them in a locker room. It was a crazy moment, but yeah.
Share that moment. That sounds fun.
I was, again, helping out with the mascot. So I had to go back to where the locker rooms were. And at the same time that I was back there, the 2 teams were coming, as the Knicks and the Rockets. They were coming out from their locker rooms, and I got stuck in the middle. So I was just the 2 teams, Rockets on my right, Knicks on my left. And the 2 players who were immediately right to my right and left were Olajuwon and Patrick Ewing. And all I remember is Ewing pointing at Olajuwon and just going, "Dream." And then they run out on the court. It was amazing.
So the picture, and I'm not sure our podcasters are getting the full picture here. I'm not a tall man.
No.
Full stop. Surratt, never tall.
Correct.
You're not as tall as I am. And so
a little bit shorter.
You standing between 2 7-footers like that is That's a sandwich right there. That's a picture. So here's my point. My point is I don't understand. I don't understand how a true Rockets fan could ever like the Knicks. You go back to that rivalry, all the stuff that went down with who's better.
It's been so long.
All that. Oh, come on. That would be like, oh, I'm for the Cubs. Like that can't happen. Anyway, doesn't matter. I'm giving it to you now. Write it down. Right now we're recording on April 24th. Finals are sometime in June. Nuggets will repeat. They're going to repeat. The game 2 against the Lakers, they were down by 20. They came back. They won the game on a final shot. LeBron explained, this was surprising to me. After the game, he explained that they blew a 20-point lead because of a bad call by the refs. And I could see the refs doing a 20-point play. But anyway, write it down. Nuggets will repeat. Hey, if you haven't seen this, search for it. Even if you don't care about the Nuggets, search for it on YouTube. There's a new Despicable Me movie coming out. I think it's number 4. And it is, have you seen this? Have you seen this promo with Jokic?
I did see it. Yep.
Yeah. So it's Jokic in a counselor. It's kind of, not that I've ever watched The Sopranos, but it's kind of reminiscent of The Sopranos. And he's talking to a counselor and he's saying how upset he is. And he's wearing this suit. And he said, I don't do a good Jokic, but he says, and they said, I look like Gru. And she said, well, talk to me about why that bothers you. And the best line is, it does not. The problem is the minions all think he's Gru and they think, and he's, I am not your boss.
That's funny.
And making fun of himself. So staying with basketball. Speaking
of him though,
yeah.
I saw something, his 2 brothers were beating up fans in the stands the other night. Like they were crawling over rows and beating
I don't know. It's possible. In the past, his brothers have mixed it up a bit with bands. I hadn't heard that one lately, but it's very possible. They are unrefined. We'll just say that. Mm-hmm. These are large Serbian farm boys who are unrefined, and they will defend their brother. And I would just say, I don't know. If you watch enough James Bond movies, I wouldn't mess with large men from Eastern Europe. Like I would just leave them alone. Like that would be my thing. So staying with basketball, I think this is funny. 2 weeks ago, Chris, could you have told me how much a rookie in the WNBA makes?
No.
Now, President Biden weighed in this last week saying that a rookie in the WNBA does not make enough money. And I'm thinking the president, the leader of the free world, is weighing in on how much a young lady coming out of college makes in the WNBA. So it's Caitlin Clark, right? She's put it all on and she makes like $76,000, right? So I talked to my daughter this week. My daughter is a newly minted electrical engineer. She's in her first job. I don't know what she makes, but I know she makes more than Caitlin Clark. And I said, you made a wise choice coming out of high school to go electrical engineering rather than professional basketball. So here's the question. Should Caitlin Clark make more than $76,000 a year to bounce a ball and throw it through a hoop?
The easy answer is yes, absolutely. I mean, that was funny when that came out. But I am assuming that the market is dictating these salaries. I mean, you can't obviously go apples to apples with the NBA and the WNBA because I don't think a lot of people at this point watch the WNBA, but I do think probably in a year or two when a lot of people tune in to watch Caitlin Clark, that may change, that the number may go up. But I also think she's going to be okay because I saw that she got a $28 million shoe deal from Nike, and they're even designing her own shoe. So I think the 76,000 will, it'll tide her over.
I think so. Yeah. She made $3 million her last year in college. So she's taken a drop to 76,000. Yeah, that shoe deal. It's funny. My oldest grandson, he is 6 and he has 2 older sisters, and they all really got into the NCAA tournament, the women's NCAA tournament. He, and you get this 6-year-old boy, 2 older sisters. He really, really, really wants a pair of Caitlin Clark Nike shoes. And like, how do you explain to him, dude, I'm not sure. We'll see. Let's just see when they come out. Maybe not. Her
Indiana Fever jersey is already sold out.
Isn't it crazy? Isn't it crazy? Yeah. The Indiana Pacers are going to get passed by the Indiana Fever in popularity in Indiana for a little while.
Which I didn't know actually existed.
I didn't either. Yeah, I didn't either.
Ago.
I couldn't tell you the name. Man, I can't. I don't think Denver has a franchise. I can't tell you any of the names. I don't know if you saw this, the difference in the financial market. So the TV deal which is where all the money comes from, the TV deal for the WNBA is $60 million a year. The NBA is $10 billion. So the revenue for the NBA is $10 billion a year, $60 million. Now here's where it should even up a little bit, because the TV deal for the WNBA is up after the 2025 season. So in other words, Caitlin Clark will play. These other girls from, young ladies from South Carolina, LSU, some of those will come into the league. So they'll play for a year. And like you said, Chris, people will either watch or they won't. If they watch, they're going to make a lot more money. If they don't, man, being best in the world at something is great. But if nobody wants to watch you do it, like, there's several things I'm best in the world at, but no one will pay me to do it. Like dude, procrastinating. I am master level. I mean, master level at procrastinating. In fact, people take money away from me from procrastinating.
If you want to hear a few more things that Jeff is maybe not great at, tune into the last.
That's
if
right.
you missed the episode with Sherry, with his wife, she brought up a lot of that. Episode
12 is a great chance to hear all the things I've ever done wrong. All right.
Yep.
I have one more, and then we have our friends coming on. Our friends, we have some serious stuff to discuss. I'm sorry.
We do.
I've been going too slow. I got to pick up the pace here. What am I doing? All right. Before we get to the serious stuff, Chris, we're going to try something new today. We're going to do 3 headlines and a lie. I borrowed this from a newsletter I read called Morning Brew. They give you 3 or 4 headlines. One of them they completely make up. The other 3 are true. Here's your 4 headlines. You have not seen which one's true. You have no idea, so you're going to guess. First one, officials have a plan to end years of monkey mayhem in central Thai city. Second one, Styx and the people who love them. Not the band Styx, literal wooden sticks. Styx and the people who love them. The third one is, man pleads guilty to theft of solid gold toilet worth $6 million from Blenheim Palace. The last one is, meet the team fighting to bring baseball caps into wedding fashion. Which one is the lie?
I think I heard about the gold toilet one. I think. So I'm going to say that's not. I would love for baseball caps to come into wedding fashion. I'm going to go with Styx and the people who love them. That's the fake one.
Nah. The fake one was meet the team fighting to bring baseball caps into wedding fashion.
That was my second choice.
My favorite one is the one you said you heard is man pleads guilty to stealing solid gold toilet. Blenheim Palace. Do you know what? Hey, this is trivia. Do you know what Blenheim Palace is famous for?
I do not.
It is the birthplace of Winston Churchill. Had a chance to visit it a couple of years ago. The story is some artist made a $6 million toilet and installed it as an art exhibit in this palace. The name of the art exhibit, it's just a gold toilet, and the name of the art exhibit was America. I don't
was going to ask if you took advantage of the gold toilet.
No, no, I didn't. I did have one question for you. What's the most you'd pay for a toilet?
$100.
Yeah. I don't think I'd go above. I think I'd go 99. I don't think I'd go 3 digits. All right. Let's talk about a couple of serious things. This has been a crazy couple of weeks in church world. If you're following what's going on out there, first is the Stronger Men conference that happened in Springfield. Neither Chris nor I were there, but we've read a little bit about it. And, we talked about it, I think, a little bit last week. It's a conference where there was an opening act with a sword swallower that was controversial. Pastor Mark Driscoll got on stage the next day and said that wasn't the right thing. The host, John Lindell, got up from the crowd and told Mark to get off the stage. He did. And then they had a little reconciliation on stage. And then the following Wednesday, Pastor John Lindell at James River Church in Springfield, he gave a sermon, and in that sermon he said that we need to rebuke Mark Driscoll, that he has continued behind the scenes to do some derogatory things. He needed to be, according to Matthew 18, he needed to be treated as a tax collector or a sinner. And then that's how they ended with praying for Mark. The next day, the sword swallower got on Instagram And he clarified some of the things that Pastor John Lindell had said the night before. He didn't know it, but his clarification made things way worse, because it's some of the stuff that James River, Pastor Lindell had thought were true weren't actually true. And some of the stuff Mark Driscoll had said about this guy actually seemed to be kind of true. So this past Sunday, Pastor Lindell got up and he apologized to his congregation. He apologized and said, we should not have had the sword swallower. I should not have invited Pastor Mark to be on stage at this. And so it's a mess. We don't need to get into the details. You can go read it anywhere you want to online. But Chris, as you've followed this a little bit, what have we learned over the last couple of weeks from this situation?
I think we have learned that one of the things that came to mind was, if you wrestle with pigs, both of you are going to get dirty, and only the pig is gonna like it. And I think that all the way around, this is a lot of wrestling in dirt. It seems like, from the church side, they obviously like a spectacle. They did bring in a sword swallower. They brought in a tank last year. They've had a boxing match, a live, real boxing match. And so spectacle is built into obviously what this church does. And so then you bring in a Mark Driscoll, and, Mark loves drama. He loves spectacle. I mean, Mark brings the drama. And what's interesting to me is, I looked at this, and this wasn't Mark's first time to speak at James River. He has spoke there several times, years past. And so I questioned, when the pastor said I should not have invited Mark to speak at this men's event, what changed? Or, he's had him several times. He knows who Mark Driscoll is. But, I think that it's just both parties probably should have known what this was before they got into it, and not gone there. But I don't know. It's hard. Last week we talked about, it's hard to put on a big event, and keep people's attention. And I get that. I do think that if you're going to platform somebody like a sword swallower, you probably should know a little bit about them. And like this guy, like you said, has come out and said, oh wait, I'm not a Christian. And he does some pretty seedy stuff on the side. So anyways, you probably should know what you got, but what are your thoughts? Yeah.
And like you said, we talked about it last week, but I think I mentioned this last week. You have to vet anybody you're going to have in a conference or on stage at your church, or a guest speaker or teacher. You have to vet them. And in the days of social media, like you would not believe the stuff people put out there. And everyone who comes to your conference or comes to your church, they're going to search the social media of that guest. You need to search it as well, and just make sure you're good with what's out there. And on the other side of it, I think we talked a little bit last week, but don't use someone else's stage as your Festivus pole. I mean, you remember Festivus from Seinfeld, and part of it was the airing of grievances. Yeah. Well, you know what? Someone else's stage isn't an opportunity to air all your grievances. So hopefully that one's behind us. We're done with that one. The other thing I just want to talk real briefly about, I don't want to go into details, but this has been very personal for me. We had an announcement come out of Orange. Orange provides children's curriculum and middle school, high school curriculum, do a lot of other stuff. I've been connected to Orange for 20 years. I've worked for them in different occasions. My wife at one point was one of their executive directors, and a very sad announcement this week that the founder and the CEO had resigned because of inappropriate relationships. And it's just been rough. Their conference, as we record, is going on right now. And as I've thought about this, I want to get your perspective, and I wrote about this in our newsletter, but a couple of takeaways for me came from my pastor this past weekend. He was preaching about reconciliation and forgiveness. And I love one of the things he said. He said, hate the what, not the who. And I think we get caught up in the hate the what, and we just love to rehash that. But you know what? I can still love my friend. I can still love my friend who I've known for 20 years. I don't have to condone what he did to love him. And I don't have to hate him to say what he did was absolutely wrong. And then Sherry was actually watching the Orange Conference last night, and their guest speaker was Danielle Strickland. She's phenomenal communicator. And Sherry shared this story. She said, Danielle said she's got a couple of young boys. She told them to clean their room. After a little while, they were so proud. We're done, Mom. Come look at our room. And she went up to their room and she said, yeah, it was pretty clean. And, but she said, this isn't my first rodeo. So I went over and I opened the closet door and everything just piled out of the closet. And then she stopped and she looked at the camera and she said, I want to talk to my boys. In fact, I want to talk to all the boys. Hiding it isn't cleaning it. And I thought, wow, like that's profound. And so I'm not pointing at anybody. Like our friend Pastor Michael used to say, when one finger is pointing at you, the other four are pointing back at me. And I never understood that.
Couldn't get the thumb.
I couldn't get the thumb.
Yeah.
But still, that I love that idea. What's your perspective?
Yeah, this one, I mean, all of them make me sad, but this one made me really sad. I'm acting like he's dead. I don't know Reggie as well as you do, but I do know Reggie a little bit through the years. And, obviously through you guys being a part of Orange and all of that. What makes me really sad about it is that it's yet another prominent Christian leader that didn't end well. I'm always looking for those leaders that led well, that left a legacy and then end well. And unfortunately, that's not the case for Reggie. But I do think you're right. You wrote an amazing post. If you haven't seen that, if you're listening to this, go to Jeff's Facebook, or you might want to link to it in the show notes for this. But you're right. The line that I love from yours, I don't know if you got it from somebody else or you came up with it, is you can't make new old friends. Is that how you said it? Yeah. I mean, I love that, and I've had this a little bit in my life when I've had close friends that have gone through a similar thing. You called out the sin. The sin is awful. He has disqualified himself, but that doesn't make Reggie an enemy. It doesn't make him a forgotten person. He needs his friends. He needs you. He needs people around him now more than he did 2 weeks ago. And, yeah. And there's no excuse. No one's trying to build an excuse. There's no circumstance that goes, oh, well, that's why it's okay. It's not okay at all. At the same time, I mean, there is repentance. There is confession. There is sorrow. I mean, there's a long, long, long road, but it's not an event where anyone is saying I didn't do anything wrong or it's all okay in no way, shape or form. So I think that's a big part of it. I've been looking forward to today's episode for quite a while, Chris. We've got a couple of friends coming on today, and they founded Chemistry Staffing. We'll talk about that a little bit. I think you've done some work with Chemistry Staffing in the past. Is that right? Yeah, I've helped those guys out. Yep. So one of the things I'll ask them when they come on, I think I want to do this every time we have someone on you used to work for. I want to hear what a bad employee you were. And so I know it was just a contract thing, but I still want to hear how bad you were at that. Is that? Yeah. Yeah, sure. Why not? So we're going to have Matt Steen and Todd Rhodes on. Little trivia about Todd. Chris, did you know Todd was a music minister for several years? I did. Yeah. In Ohio. I think Bryan, Ohio. He was a music minister for several years, but he was an early pioneer in leveraging the internet. You and I think the first we ever heard of Todd Rhodes was Monday Morning Insight. And we'll talk about that with him a little bit, but it was this newsletter that came out oddly enough on Monday mornings, and it was unique in its style, in the way the voice was kind of tongue in cheek a little bit. And it was fascinating. I remember you and I were both at a conference. I don't remember the conference, and we found out Todd Rhodes was going to be there. And it was like, oh my gosh, Todd Rhodes of Monday Morning Insight. And it's like, yeah. And then we both worked with him at Leadership Network, and we found out he's really not a big deal. He's just, no. And he loves for people to come up to him at conferences and just start talking to him. Todd loves that. So if you see Todd and you're just happen to be even supermarket, conference, yes, go up to him and start talking to him because he loves it. Yeah, he's an extreme extrovert, and we'll get into that a little bit. So he was the guy who did Monday Morning Insight. He created something called churchstaffing.com, which was like the original
the OG of church staffing type things. At Leadership Network, he actually helped create one of the first online church leadership conferences. And Chris, I don't remember if you were involved with Leadership Network at the time, but it was the funniest thing. The technology was not there. So like there were cameras taped to chairs, and it was the most janky thing you've ever seen, but he pulled it off, and he continues to be a major thought leader among Christian influencers. And then Matt, I don't know Matt as well, but I love Matt. Matt's been a youth pastor, an executive pastor. He's planted a church. Here's the thing about Matt, though. He's got an MBA and an MDiv from Baylor University. Here's trivia for you. Do you know what those letters mean? Because I'm not entirely sure.
One is business and one is minister, pastor. Yeah. Somehow he combined the two. You
and I can barely spell MDiv and MBA, but Matt has both of them, so he's obviously the brains of the operation. I've got a couple of questions I want to ask these guys, so let's talk to Matt and Todd. So Matt and Todd, thank you guys so much for joining us. I mentioned a while ago, I've been looking forward to this for a while because you guys are just a lot of fun. Chemistry staffing, you do that together. You guys are almost synonymous now. So I got to ask you guys a question. First of all, how did you two become a couple?
That's your first question?
It is. Let me back up.
First of all, I want to know where Sherry is because I was told Sherry was going to be on this podcast. That's the only reason I'm here.
Sherry said, hey, tell Todd hi, tell Matt hi.
Hey. Yeah.
And she said, as she always does, Todd is just the nicest guy. So let me back up. Let me rephrase the question. So I know you guys individually, but you guys have been working together for a while. How did you guys start working together?
We've asked ourselves that question. I think that we met at Exponential about 34 years ago.
I think it was Catalyst, but we can differ on that.
Well, we rewrite history here. But I think we kind of were on the conference circuit together for a while and just kind of met there. Interesting story though. Whenever we're on a Zoom call or anything, he usually introduces me as his partner, which for some reason, 10 years ago was fine, but just makes me really incredibly nervous now. So I just have to clarify it with business partner.
And one of my spiritual gifts is just making Todd incredibly nervous and feel awkward. So that my job's done. So.
Well, if it's helpful, I think of the two of you as partners. So that I don't know what that means, but that's great. So Todd, I want to direct a question at you. We met several times, none of which you would remember, but one you might remember is we met playing whirly ball with Leadership Network in Dallas. Do you remember that?
I do remember that. That's like one of my favorite nights of all time. I knew nobody, and as a flaming introvert, I was already, just right in my element. So what better for those of you that don't know what whirly ball is? To the best of my remembrance, and maybe I'm making this up in my head, Jeff, so correct me. You were kind of like in a bumper car with like the stick with a net, and you had to it was kind of like ping pong or hockey or something where you had to try and maneuver around. And literally the next day I had where the seatbelt went across, I had a bruise.
Oh, that's good.
It was a blast, but it was very intense.
Well, we're going to have our mutual friend Dave Travis on in a few weeks, and I did ask him at what point he thought whirly ball was a great idea for a time to bring Todd in. But Todd, actually, Chris and I talked about it before you guys got on. Some people don't know this, but you basically invented the internet. Like I knew you from originally from Monday Morning Insight. Al Gore.
Yeah, me and Al Gore.
Yeah, no, Al Gore, he took credit, but you invented the internet. Like you were the first of the social media before there was social media. You were a social media star. Like I remember, like, oh my goodness, that's the Todd Rhodes. And then of course you started churchstaffing.com, which was as far as I know, it was kind of the beginning of search and before that it was like, who do you know? But churchstaffing.com was kind of, oh wow, there's actually a place I could actually And so I'm being facetious, but not the church involvement on the internet. You were one of the pioneers. We talked about you actually kind of were one of the first guys to put on an online conference at Leadership Network. So as you see where church use of the internet has gone since, those early 2000s and some of the innovative things you were doing, as you've seen that, where it's evolved to in the pandemic and beyond, how do you feel? How do you feel about what has happened with that, just that tool of the church using the internet?
It's kind of crazy. So I'm getting old, Jeff. I kind of lament and go back to some of the early days, because it seemed like back in the early days of the internet, at least in kind of the church and the pastor world, there was kind of a really tight community. Remember back in Twitter, and there were a whole bunch of platforms that kind of came and went. But it was just kind of a level playing field where you could not only connect with people that you would never connect with in person or never have the opportunity to, but also, it's just learn from people. I think what has changed, I was just having a conversation we're onboarding a new team member this week, and I was having a conversation with how things have changed the last 35 years. I won't bore you with it, but even 35, but I will bore you with it. 35 years ago, before the internet, it was kind of a denominationally driven. The American church was very much denominationally driven. A lot of denominations were itinerant. The pastors were itinerant. So you kind of went to a conference once a year to find out where you were going to serve the next year. You didn't have a clue. I think the first thing that kind of cracked that denominational thing was, I think, the Willow and the Saddleback models that kind of did these for the first time, and not necessarily for the first time, but they were kind of notable conferences that were nationwide. So now, instead of just saying, I'm Southern Baptist, you're like, well, I'm purpose driven, or I'm seeker sensitive, or something like that. That was kind of the first thing. And then the internet came on, and I was just at a great place at a great time when, finding your next pastoral role was really, where am I going to move in my denomination, or who did I go to college with, that wants me to come and work with them. It was very relationally driven. And when the internet came, and sites like Church Staffing and some others, it was really an opportunity for the church, for any church anywhere in America, to do a national search and to find a pastor that wasn't in their network. So there were good things that came out of that. There's been some, Matt says I'm paying penance for some of the work that I did back in the early days, but there's been some good things come out of that and some bad things come out of that. But now, and I'll wind down here, it's fragmented now. So it's just not kind of a cohesive community. You don't get that. At least I find it hard to get that community of pastors and church leaders that we had maybe 10 or 15 years ago. So I'm kind of lamenting that a little bit. That's kind of what I think. I'd be interested to hear your call on that too.
No, that's fascinating. The breaking down of some denominational lines. I not even thought about that, but you're right. Like that is a part of that piece. It's funny when you say that, Todd, because there was early on a camaraderie, because there weren't a lot of us. We were at Seacoast, Chris, you remember this, we were one of the first ones to try to do online church and to stream our services. And there weren't very many of us, and we got together, we talked about it. Leadership Network helped us do a lot of that. Now it seems like we use the internet to beat each other up. Like we took this thing that was about connecting, and we turned it into a club to beat each other over the head with it. I want to shift gears just a bit. I love that. I'm going to have to chew on that a bit. But Matt, you guys at Chemistry Staffing, you're always helping churches figure out what's our next staff member, how do we hire, who do we hire, what's a good fit. You guys are brilliant at that. And I'm not asking obviously for a name of a church. That's not what I mean. But what is the biggest mistake, like beyond, they didn't use Chemistry Staffing, but what is the biggest kind of mistakes that you're seeing churches make as they think about hiring new staff?
Yeah, that's a great question, and you hit the big one. Is not calling us. I think one of the things that as Todd and I kind of put our heads together to see what is it that's the common theme in a long-term healthy fit, right? It's 5 things, and none of these are rocket science. We're just not that smart, right? But it's theological alignment. It's the type of church culture somebody's come out of. It's personality fit. It's skill set, and then it's a general sense of chemistry, right? And that's the 5 things. What we see happen is, I think what's going on is churches forget the first 3. And they focus on skills and ability, and they focus on chemistry. Okay. And that's not a bad thing, because, we talk about character, competence, chemistry, all that kind of stuff as being the big 3 in hires. But what typically ends up happening is you got somebody who gets a resume in front of them, and they say, "Oh, I know that church. I listened to their pastor's podcast. He's one of those Surratts." And so then they kind of, they think, "Oh yeah, of course he can do the job. It's going to be great." Right. Then they start to interview him. They fall in love with him. They laugh at the guy's jokes. It reminds them of his nephew, something like that. But in the back of their head, there's something that's saying, "Hey, wait a minute. You know what? I do know that pastor. I do know their podcast. Theologically, they're just a little bit off from where we are. Oh, it'll be fine. The Holy Spirit will work it out. We're all Christians here." And then somewhere around 18 months in, the theological divides really start to kind of come up as being a bigger deal. And it's one of those deals. And you guys know this. We're really good in the church world at using the same words to mean totally different things, right? So spirit-led, everybody wants a spirit-led, pastor. But that means one thing for John MacArthur and his friends, and something totally different for our Pentecostal friends, right? But we see that on a resume, and we just think it means what we want it to mean. And instead of digging deep and really kind of wrestling through some of that stuff, I think that's where some of this stuff goes sideways. I think that's why the average stay for somebody is about 3 years right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is it still hard, guys, to find that 35-year-old lead pastor candidate with 32 years of experience? Is that still tough to find?
Todd built a warehouse out behind his, out behind his barn, and he's got, I think, about 17 or 18 of them just came off the truck today. So yeah, man, we got plenty.
It's funny, Chris, you say that, because we purposely make this podcast a bit of an insider podcast, but for people who aren't in that world, like, they probably don't understand that is the stereotype. Like, he's got to be 35 years old. He has to have the wisdom of a 60-year-old. He has to understand the next gen, and he has got to have 35 years of experience in ministry. And you see it. As you're talking, Matt, like, I walked through this in my own life. I used to work for a church on the West Coast, a rather large church, that Todd brought up a while ago, called Saddleback. And great church, love it. Obviously knew Saddleback when they started talking to me about coming out and working for him. I had preached more of Rick Warren's sermons than Rick has preached of his sermons, and I just super familiar. Went out, spent 2 days out there, had dinner with Rick Warren. Was like, "Oh, I'm having dinner with Rick Warren. This is unbelievable." And Rick, on the way, I'm driving through In-N-Out Burger on the way to the airport, and I get a text, and it says, "Hey, this is Rick. You're the man for the job. Come on out here." And I said, "I'm the man for the job." And I went out, and man, I love Rick. Ton of respect for the church. And you said 18 months. I lasted 11 months. Yeah. And it was because, and I think they would say the same thing, it wasn't a fit. It didn't, I knew the church well. I mean, probably better than any church I knew other than the one I worked for. Didn't fit. Yeah. So I'll skate here. Anybody. So during the pandemic, churches, everything changed, right? I wrote one of those articles. Everything changed. The church will never be the same again until it is. And the thing to do then was fire your kids' staff. No, you guys didn't say this, but fire all your kids' staff and hire all online. And it was, you got to staff up online. This is the new trend, and digital. And yeah, that thing you do in person will be fine, but the only thing that matters. And again, I'm painting it broad. We all thought some things would happen that didn't happen, and church staff, or staff for church online is important, all that. But that was a trend. That was a huge trend. I don't know if it's a trend you guys do. I don't know if it's still a trend. I would love to know what trends do you see for church staffing going forward? Is it still hard pull toward digital? Are there new roles that you're seeing come online, or is it, hey, it's the same, it's always been? Just, I'd love to see what are the trends in the next 10 years, 5 years for new hires for church staff?
This will be interesting. We might have different answers for this. You want to go first?
I'm going to let Todd go first, and I'm going to contradict him completely.
What do I see trending? And I don't know that this is a great answer, but I see trending back to pre-COVID what the church was. And from my perspective, in a lot of ways, swing and a miss there, church. I think we went through a tremendous, and I'm painting with a broad brush here too. I think we went through a tremendous crisis, whatever you want to call it, during COVID. I think that a lot of churches did their absolute best. We worked all the way through that, man. We were trying to get our company going during that time, and all of a sudden everything shuts down. It was scary. It was scary for us too. So we were really trying to dig into the trends and figure out where this thing was going. One of the first trend, absolutely, that you said, Jeff, was to do online ministry. I think a lot of that has fizzled, quite honestly. My hope going into that was, man, what an opportunity. If you think about just the technology that we have today, if we would have had this technology even 20 years ago, that you could pull out your phone and press a couple buttons and be able to broadcast everywhere around the world, whatever message of the gospel that you wanted to do, and to disciple people and pray with people and all of the stuff that could do. I was really hopeful that COVID would help the church, the Big C church, kind of crack the code at some of that innovation that we've not seen for a while. And I think there were some pieces here and there that came through, but for the most part, it was kind of full on panic mode for those 4 to 6 months that we couldn't meet. And then as soon as we were able to meet, man, it's like everybody was so tired, and everybody's like, finally we get to meet again. And very quickly, whether we wanted to or not, we went back to what we knew how to do. And it's how to do big gatherings. That's how to do on-site ministry, all of that kind of good stuff. So we can talk about what's happened with staffing and all of that, because I think there has been a few things, particularly on the candidate side, that have been really big changes since COVID. But from the church side, I don't see, Matt, you can disagree with me, please, but I don't see a lot of trends like, hey, we got a lot of churches that are hiring this position, not hiring that position. I think we're still seeing the long tail. I think over the next couple of years, we're going to see more changes. Overall, I would say if there's any change that I see, I think there's going to be a little bit more consolidation in some of the positions that people hire. And there's a swing back. The pendulum constantly swings. I think the pendulum is going to swing back a little bit more to what it was 20, 25 years ago, where we're seeing a lot more churches contact us saying, hey, we need an associate pastor, or we need a pastor that does this and this, which, was very common 20, 25 years ago, 5 or 10 years ago, not so much. You didn't see that job description. So that's some of the things that I'm seeing.
I think for me, the thing that was most encouraging was in the churches that really thrived through COVID was a return to just classic block and tackle pastoring. Mm-hmm. I think one of our favorite churches to work with, they basically pulled everybody into a staff meeting and said, hey, look, you're all discipleship pastors now, regardless of what your job was, go call people. And they were calling people and asking them, whether they needed toilet paper or water or whatever, and all that kind of stuff. And they picked up people. They grew like tremendously through COVID and those relationships, and people came to faith and that kind of thing. So I think that's one of the encouraging trends I saw coming out of COVID. But as far as specific jobs, I figured, if you had asked me 3 years ago what I was expecting to see, I was expecting to see more churches wanting to hire communications pastors, more wanting to hire online campus directors and pastors and all that kind of stuff. Don't know that I've really seen that since then. The thing that's been really kind of concerning for me. Can I be a little ray of sunshine? Is that
absolutely okay? That's why you're here.
Okay.
That's why we invited you, Matt.
Outstanding. So I'm going to bring it down a little bit. I think the thing that's concerning for me, we watched in March and April of 2021 as youth pastors left ministry, right? And they took it harder than anybody, and I don't think they've come back yet. And so one of the things that we've seen is, that was accelerated, and that was kind of an exposure of some weaknesses that we've got capital C church-wise through the pandemic and the time leading up to that. But we haven't seen a replenishment of those younger ranks. And you guys have all heard the stats about how old the average age of a pastor is and all that kind of stuff right now. Depending on the agenda and who's doing it, it's either 55 or 60, right? Our pool of who we're raising up, we just haven't really kind of called out people to go into ministry. I was at lunch last week with a guy that we're talking about this because I'm just a ray of sunshine and a barrel of monkeys everywhere I go. And he looked at me and his jaw just kind of dropped. And he said, it's been about 15 years since I encouraged somebody to go into ministry. And it wasn't intentional or anything like that. It's just for some reason we kind of got away from that. And I'm hearing a lot of denominational leaders. I'm hearing a lot of seminary leaders that are saying, man, we just dropped the ball in calling out the called. And if you're talking about bigger, church-wide trends, that's one that we've got to reverse, because we really need to invest in the next generation and call them into ministry and give them a, preferred future there. So Todd, cheer us up.
No, I agree. I think what COVID did, and I'm so tired of talking about it, but I think there were cracks there that it just widened the cracks and exposed them a little bit, which in some cases was a very good thing. In some cases, it just showed us that we've got some real work to do.
Yeah. I love what you're saying there, Matt, we've been talking about that. And I'm actually, in addition to my worldwide stage as a podcast host, I work as an executive pastor for a local church. And we've talked about that, like when was the last time we called younger people to consider ministry as a vocation? Like, yeah, you want to do that? We can help you. No, we used to call people into that. I've said, and this is my own soapbox, but I have a 13-year-old granddaughter who loves church, loves Jesus, loves working with kids, works with kids every Sunday. And if I were the pastor at her church, I would begin to treat her like our next children's pastor.
Absolutely.
And I would be using her in ways, never ways that would be dangerous or anything like that. But I would be bringing her into conversations to expose her to, this is what it looks like to be a children's pastor, children's director, or in a church. Yeah, I love that.
And 13 is not too young to do that.
No,
right.
No.
It needs to start there. That was my upbringing in my tribe. I mean, summer camp was, all about, bringing the guilt on, are you called to be to the mission field? Are you called, it was like that. And all the youth group things that we did, it was like that when I went to college. I went to a Christian college and we did altar calls to call people to ministry, and I'm not saying all that was done perfectly, but by and large, a lot of our churches and a lot of our tribes and a lot of our colleges, it's gone away.
Yeah.
We don't challenge people.
I tell some churches, when we have this conversation, they're looking for a youth pastor, say. And part of what I tell them, and this is a horrible business decision, so don't tell my wife, she's an accountant. I tell them, hey, there's got to be somebody in your congregation that has the character to do this, that has evidence of a call to ministry. They just don't have the skill set yet. Grab that person, sit them down, drink a lot of coffee and say, have you considered going into ministry? Maybe hire them on at the low end of the salary range that you've got, and take the money you save and invest in an education for them and get them trained. That makes it tough for Todd and I to be able to pay our mortgage. But man, I tell you what, the church needs us to step up and really start speaking that into people. Because that's where the next generation of senior pastors are going to come as we continue to watch it age out. So.
Yeah. And I've got to be serious here for a second. This is one of the reasons that I always recommend you guys. If someone's saying, hey, who should I talk to? There's a lot of good guys out there doing similar things to you guys. But one of the reasons I love saying you guys, because I know both of you have a ministry heart first. You're businessmen. You're growing a business. You're doing a great job at it, but you're doing it for kingdom purposes in the end. And I love that about you. Another thing that I love is I can always get an honest answer. And this is a question. We tend to have people on the podcast that Chris used to work for. And so there's a lot there. I mean, we could do another 30, 40 episodes, but I always want to know. And I know you guys were wise and didn't actually employ him, but he did some work for you and with you. How bad was that? Like, how bad was it having Chris like on the team?
It was so bad. I'll say it was so bad that Todd stopped being on the calls I was on. He never showed up again. I haven't seen Todd in years.
Yeah, I like the beard. I don't even think you had the beard last time I saw you, Chris.
Yeah.
Definitely, if you did have the beard, it wasn't white.
Yeah,
and it's funny too, because this is podcast, but you can't see Matt. The look on Matt's face is like, Chris worked with us. Like
Exactly.
Exactly.
This is news to me. And I don't know. So yeah, it sounds like Todd, your answer would just be like, we just kind of let him drift away. Like that was the best thing about it.
No, we actually hired Chris so that I didn't have to go to those meetings. So yeah, there you go.
I got you. Well, I can tell I'm getting nothing out of you guys, but I'm going to keep trying. I'm going to keep asking.
Todd had the same reply that our oldest brother has. Chris who?
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Oh, is this the part where we mock Greg because he's not here? Because he's too good to be on the podcast?
We can. Yeah, he is too good. He also he's got a little thing going on right now in Birmingham, Alabama. There's some little church plant thing that he's on the board of that has their annual little, what do they call it, Chris? A little gathering that they do.
Something about an ARC
conference.
Yeah.
ARC conference. Yeah.
Whatever. I mean, priorities. Your brother's podcast or.
Yeah. Right. That's why I told him he is on stage as we speak, begging for money. He said, take up an offering. I think he's begging for money. So
pick up your cell phone and call him, see if he answers.
Oh, I love doing that. Texting him when he's on stage. Yeah. By the way, I talked about how bad an employee Chris was. My brother told me for years, great, Jeff, we'd fire you if we could just figure out what it is you do. And so yeah. So one more before you guys got to go. You guys have been so generous with your time and with the goofiness that always happens here. So I've got some hot topics for you. These are stuff that I'm sure it's more pop related. So I know that you're the two guys to answer these questions. First of all, our podcast is nothing but serious stuff. So we talk about Taylor Swift every single podcast we already have today. So I need to know from the two of you, Taylor Swift, is she a rising star or a fading has-been? Rising star, fading has-been, Taylor Swift.
Well, have you been following all the latest? She just dropped a new album.
Yeah, we talked about that a little bit.
Which I heard on social media is overtly anti-Christian. So I'm going to say that she is, and I'm taking as gospel what I read online, which I think is the proper thing to do. So I'm going to say falling, was it rising star or falling?
Or fading has been.
I'm going to say fading has been, at least in the Christian community.
Abraham Lincoln said, believe everything you read on the internet.
Yes,
so
he
did.
I do, yes. Yep.
She's that girl that's dating the football player, right?
There we go. Okay. Yeah, that's good. That's good, Matt.
I think she's on the way
up. By the way, Todd, we highly recommend you listen to this podcast later, because before you came on, Chris and I gave the definitive answer of about Taylor Swift's latest album. So just listen to that. Second one, this is super important. Snickers or Almond Joy?
Almond Joy.
Snickers. Frozen Snickers.
Frozen Snickers. Nice.
Ooh,
yeah.
No, I could go there. That's good.
Yeah. Because sometimes Sometimes you feel like a nut. Sometimes you don't. So that was a throw out for the extremely old folks. All right. One more. Last question. This is probably the one that this will decide the winner, I think. So steel cage death match among the Surratt brothers. So I think you all know our older brother, Greg, me, and Chris. Steel cage death match among the Surratt brothers. Who you got? And why?
Wow, you pull out the tough questions.
Oh, come on.
I don't think that one's that tough.
I don't think it's that tough. It's an easy
here's
answer.
the thing. I think it's Chris. He's got youth working for him. I mean, his older brother doesn't even know he exists, so he can sneak up behind him and, choke hold him and stuff. I think it's Chris. I think it's Chris.
He's well over a half century old. Like, yeah, he's younger than me, but youth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you're like a 3/4 of a century. So yeah,
got it. Yeah.
Don't
Todd.
break your hip.
Oh,
so I'm gonna get just.
Oh, wow. No, just a minute, Todd. We'll get to you. But Matt, for my generation, that's very personal. You don't. I may very well be sitting here with a broken hip. Todd. Okay, who you got? Steel cage deathmatch.
I'm going to even it out. I'm going to pick you, Jeff. Even with a broken hip, I think you could beat Chris.
Right.
Sorry, Chris. Your name is Chris, right? Yes.
Oh, by the way, I love that image of me beating Chris with my broken hip, like just beating him over the head.
And I probably would have picked Greg, but I don't know that he'd actually show up for the match.
Oh,
and
that
Greg
was
is ancient.
That was awesome. Like he would.
We say that's true. We say Jeff is old. Greg is like, he
fossil.
should be dead. Really.
Is he not?
Greg has 2 broken hips.
He's one of those guys that like you hear he's still alive. You're like, really?
As we said earlier in the podcast, it's only here that you will hear this kind of quality broadcasting live from across the country. Hey, Todd and Matt, we really appreciate it. We really love what you guys do. Yeah.
Can I do a plug quick?
Oh, and we plugged the heck out of you before you came on, and we'll plug you like crazy after, but go ahead, plug away.
Just, very quickly, we just opened our second annual church staff health assessment. You can take it for free. It's at churchstaffassessment.com. Go take it. It's absolutely free. You get a free report. We're looking at all different characteristics of how healthy you are as a church staff member.
I'm glad you hit that. And we love chemistry staffing. And I think that you have been at the center of a lot of great research in the past on the church. And so I really appreciate doing that. Jump on there, do that. Thanks for being on the podcast, guys. We'll send you the check a little bit later for your time today. But thanks for being with us.
Great. Thanks for
having us. They're sending us a check. I don't know if they know that, but
Check's in the mail.
Okay, good.
I want to talk about one of our sponsors, and that's Intentional Reach. And they could be your partner in turning audio and video sermons into top-notch transcripts. And they specialize in sermon transcription, podcasts, conferences, interviews, webinars. If it's spoken, they transcribe it. And these transcripts can boost your online reach up to 3-fold. Search engines love text, and transcripts make your content more searchable. Plus, at about $400 a month, it's a cost-effective way to expand your audience. And they're not just for websites. They can be repurposed for newsletters, blogs, social media, and more. So check it out. Go to intentionalreach.com and hit get your transcripts today.
So that was a lot of fun. Matt and Todd are some of the funniest guys in show business. Chris, what do you think?
Love those guys. I did work with them for a while doing some interviews. And what I love about chemistry staffing is what you pointed out is that the guys who run it and all the way through are ministry first. And so they really care for every candidate. They check in on them. They ask them how their soul is and their heart and all of that before they even get into a job thing. So I love those guys. And you were talking about Todd inventing the internet. I still remember my first time reading Monday Morning Insight. I don't know who pointed it to me. And I went, oh my goodness, I had no idea anything like this exists. I have to start reading this every Monday. It was like I'd been behind the internet and suddenly I had to catch up with Todd's newsletter.
Right. Yeah. I remember thinking there's somebody else out there that's sarcastic and says it out loud. And so that was fun. Yeah. Hey, thanks for joining us today for Lucky episode 13. We talked about a lot of stuff today. Look in the show notes. I'll put that video of Jokic being Gru, but we'll also put some serious stuff in there. Chris mentioned the article I wrote, just talking about my response to some failures of some friends. We'll link to that. Our latest newsletter, we'll link to that. But check it out. We'd love for you to subscribe to the newsletter. And hey, if you would like or review this podcast. What that does, that's not just for us to feel good. When you do that, it pops up in other people's feeds, and it helps people know that we are there. So, and I cannot tell you how thankful we are that you listen to this craziness. And we hope to hear you at the next episode. So we'll see you soon.
See ya.